checking to see that the person on the other end could hear me. All right, write the polynomial v series graph is shown, and again, we're just going to find zeros and plug them in. Now, we have to know something about these zeros here. How many times they happen is a big deal. Here's a zero right here. So x equals -3. How many times did it happen? At least once. Here's a zero at -1. How many times did it happen? At least once. There's also a zero at 4. Happens at least once. How'd you know it happened at least once? They're all crosses. They all cross the x-axis. How many turning points have thing got? Two turning points. We are at least degree what? 3. We also need to study end behavior. You don't have to do some of this stuff. By and large, just the zeros alone will cover it, but it's just to make sure. It's really easy to make a question that gives you this. It really is. End behavior starts at I and 0. Negative x what not? Odd. End behavior suggests negative x to the odd. Because negative x to the odd starts high in its life and ends low in its life. End behavior suggests a negative x to the odd. All right. That's what I've learned about my polynomial so far. I've learned all that stuff. Grant, you get all that? Yes. Now, I'm going to do my setup here. My polynomial will be y equals a times, what happens to these zeros when we put them in? X plus 3, x plus 1, and the last factor is x minus 4. Now, turning point theorem told me I was at least degree 3. Have I written a third degree polynomial up there? Yes, because I wrote out 3 factors. Okay, so that's fine. End behavior told me that the value of a is going to be negative, didn't it? All I really need to do is find the value of a. There's a reason there's another point given on this graph. Why are you given another point that's not a 0? So that you can find a. That's the whole point. This point helps find a. Because what does it give you?
The line.
It also gives you more than a y value. It's a point. It gives you an x and a y. If you want to solve a, like, you have 3 unknowns in this equation, don't you?
Yeah.
How many unknowns can you have in an equation to figure it out? 1. That's the whole point of having that point. To reduce this down to one thing, y is 24, x is 0. Plug it in. And do a little bit of that math. You know, and don't be the kid who does 0 plus 3 in the calculator. Oh my God. Don't be that kid. I think you got 3 times 1 times -4. What is that? -12. So that's attached to A. Do a little division. What's your A value? -2. End behavior suggested that, didn't it? It suggested a negative A value. It's kind of how we check our work as we go. So our actual equation happens when we plug this in. Your notes talk about something there, and it's bolded. It's like never forget A. I've done this for years. Kids never want to figure out what A is, ever. It's always wrong. you know, you just got to keep going with flow and do what everybody else does and forget about A. You get it wrong too. You got to find A, otherwise you didn't write the equation with polynomial shown. You wrote something similar, not the one you've shown. That's kind of the gist of today. It's really not that hard. Not the first time you've plugged in a point to find missing things. Not the first time you've plugged zeros in anything in a factor. It's built on old stuff. I'm going to scan through your... Okay, so this is the only other graph I have. Good. Can somebody give me a zero?
-2.
And a 0 at -2. So the factor is what? X plus 2. What's the minimum number of times that factor happens? Once. I'm just going to put a 1 there. How'd you know that?
It goes through.
It's cross. Okay? It's cross. Just like the number 1, right? It's cross. There was also a 0 at -1. So the factor is what? X plus 1. How many times that guy happen?
At
least once. I'll put a 1 there. Yeah, that's a cross situation. We have a factor, the next 0 we have, and it's the only other 0 we have, is at 1.
But it happens at least twice.
0 at 1. Factor is x minus 1. It happens at least twice. How'd you know that?
It touches.
It touches twice. Now, before we actually write the equation, let's talk about a couple of things. How many turning points you got?
3.
3 turning points. So we are at least x to the 4th. Right? 4th degree. You also need to take into consideration end behavior. You really, really do. Things like that are useful on multiple choice tests. You know, if you can just look at it and say, oh, it's negative x to the 4th, you probably throw away half your answer choices. You really do. But your end behavior, start slow, end slow, suggests a negative x to the evil. So if I just knew that stuff real quick in my head, I probably wouldn't have a whole lot of work. There's a good chance I'd have the right answer without doing any math, to be quite honest with you. Because I would realize that the very first thing I'm looking for is negative x to the 4th power. That's the very first thing I'm looking for. Okay? So anyways, let's write our polynomial. We've got to have that a value. We've got x plus 2. We have an x plus a 1. We have an x minus a 1 that is squared.
Your other point is at 0, -4.
The other point's at 0, -4, and 1 intercept. The guy gives me an x and a 1. I might just plug him in. So figure out what a is married to. It's not married to -2%. A might be -2, but it's not married to.
It's married to
When you
positive.
When you put the y, you just select like any point, or is there a certain point you have to do
Any other point.
besides the one you
You
use?
can't reuse stuff. Can't use single
But I can
twice.
use like,
If I give you this guy right here, you can use him.
but I can't use the one that's on the x
No, because you've already used him.
because the zeros.
You can't use something twice. Anyways, that becomes a -1 that's squared, which is 1, times a 1, which is 1, times a 2, which is 2. So -4 is twice an a, which means that my a value is -2. And that little guy, I'm just trying to save time here, goes right there. That's your equation. I'm not asking you to write these things out in standard form. I'm not asking you to do a whole bunch of FOILing and double distributing and triple distributing. I'm just asking you to write them out in practical form. All right, anybody got any glaring issues you need to talk about? All right, so the next problem is a calculator problem. I'll write out how we're going to do this ahead of time. What we're going to do is we're going to click on the Stat button, and you'll see, actually we're going to press the Stat button on your calculator, and Edit is highlighted. So we're going to press Enter. We're going to enter the X's into list 1, the Y's into list 2. After we're done with that, this is a cubic function. Notice it says cubic function. We're going to do stat, calc, cubic, reg, which stands for cubic regression. So there's the instruction set to what we're doing. Five nine. That's it. Now you need 5.9 here. A calculator can write a cubic function for you. Now, it actually will give you the function in standard form, not factored form. So anyways, the stat button is right over there by the arrows. It's on the second row, third column. And edit is highlighted. You press enter. And this is not the first time you've been here in your life. Your Algebra 1 teacher would have had you do stuff in here too. Most likely with lines and stuff like that. Line's the best fit. But you probably have some stuff in yours. I'm going to clear the lists out. To clear a list out, you arrow up until the list is highlighted and you press the clear key. Press enter. List is clear. You got to clear both your lists. Do you guys remember doing this with Miss Garner? You've been here before in your life. I swear you have. You already got this all typed in?
Is there anything behind the calculator? Like written?
The instruction set.
Yeah.
Anyways, the X is in list 1, Y is in list 2. List 1 is always the independent variable. List 2 is always the dependent variable. What do you mean?
Like, you know how the list gets deleted out of it?
You have a deleted list? You need to do a hard reset of your calculator. Hit second mem, which is second plus. What's your calculator say when you do that? What's your first choice? Do you see anything on there that says reset? Scroll down to reset. Press enter. All RAM. You'll see your list there when you go back. That's the only way I know to put them back in. Well, anyways, where was I? Oh yeah, we got distracted. Eating up class time here. Algebra is one of those funny courses where we want you to ask questions, but honest to God truth, we don't have time to answer your questions. Anyway, so I got my stuff in L1 and L2. It's a cubic function. You click on stat, calc, you'll see it right there. All these things are named like they're supposed to be named. You want to do a quadratic, you do a quadratic regression. Cubic regression. Okay, they're all common sense. And you press enter. And I've got a newer style up here. I actually have to press enter several times to get down to calculate. You may have something that says cubic reg. It's just a line of text and you press enter. And there is your equation.
You just plug in your variables.
Plug in your points. And then you, what's wrong, Grant?
It only put like list 1 back, and then it jumped to list 4.
So you did all RAM, right?
Yes, sir.
Try doing defaults.
That's what I just did. And it did.
I think it's 6.
Your calculator is still usable.
I guess I could use list four.
I'm on the way to come back.
I had to do
Back
here.
There's a million people that still think that.
Staff,
Staff.
it's staff.
Yeah.
Alright, now scroll over, Cal.
Where'd you go?
Stat editor.
Never used it before in my life. I got lucky. Anyways, to write this thing out, all you gotta do is plug in A, B, and C where the calculator tells you to. That's it. Negative 0.25 is negative 1/4, right? Just like fractions. 2.75, what are you, 11 quarters? Yeah. 11 quarters X. And you don't have to do this. This is just me. Okay? That's just me. Minus 19 halves of X plus 10. I ain't gonna dock you for the decimals, kids. It's just me. I like fractions. Okay. All I did was I plugged in A, B, C, and D where they belong according to the calculator, right? And I just changed it to fractions. You don't have to do that. That's how you use a calculator. And let's see, we got 6 minutes class time left, so let's see what needs to be done, because everything else here is actually review. So would you rather talk about factoring or this one? You want to talk about this one? Write a polynomial of least degree with leading coefficient of -4 that has the following zeros. All right. Actually, this one doesn't need to be talked about. Before I even start writing anything, I have a 0 at 2i. What else do I know? I know there's 0 at -2i. The weird ones happen in pairs. It's been talked about. You change the sign on what's weird to get the other guy. I have 1 plus I as well. I have 2 plus the square root of 7. That's square root, not square. Square root of 7. What's the other one?
2 minus.
2 minus square root of 7. Now you're ready to start writing a polynomial. You call it y, f of x, g of x. If you hate math, h of x, whatever. Nobody cares. What's that start with?
-4.
-4.
X minus 2 cubed.
Good job, Sam. Multiplicity of 3. You better put 3 as next. But that's really kind of well, that was basically what I wanted to go for the most part. You have a factor at plus 2i, so what's, sorry, you have 0 plus 2i, what's the factor?
X
Minus plus I. You have a 0 at minus 2i, what's the factor?
plus 2i.
Anyone besides Sam? You have a factor at 1 minus I. Sorry, 0. No. That's right. Listen, thank you. She listened, you didn't. She listened. You're going to throw 2 things in parentheses. How many times are you going to change signs? Twice. X minus 1 plus I. I got to run out of room here. How about the other factor?
X minus 1 minus I.
Yep. The last 2. X minus 2 minus square root of 7. And the last one.
X minus 2 plus
square root of 7.
Now, next year, the course you take would actually want you to put that all together. It's not that long. It's like 10 minutes here, late.
We need to get it all together.
Put it in center form.
Oh.
It looks like you put the square root of x.
It does look like an X, doesn't it? That's a 7. Is there a factoring problem you'd make me to look at? Because, you know, there's been a lot of factoring questions on your homework?
64x, 6 minus 1.
Well, Grant, you had your hand up.
Oh, no, I didn't.
So Sam, you want me to look at 64x is 6 minus 1? There are-
Is that just the difference of 2 cubes twice?
It's going to be a difference of 2 cubes followed by a difference of 2 squares. Oh, no, it could be done actually many ways. There's at least 2 ways of doing this one off the top of my head. You could actually hit it with a difference of 2 squares and then a difference of 2 cubes. Could you do a difference of 2 cubes from the start? Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah, there's one. You actually can do a difference of 2 cubes twice. It's really up to you. I usually do problems like this with difference of 2 squares first. That'd be 8x cubed minus 1 times 8x cubed plus 1. Because 8 times 8 is 64, and x cubed times x cubed is x to the 6th. And then you'll see your difference of 2 cubes. And there's also a sum of 2 cubes. See this guy right here, 8x cubed minus 1 and 8x cubed plus 1. You have an a cubed minus a b cubed. And you have an a cubed plus a b cubed. You just have to realize what you're cubing. What do you cube to become 8x cubed?
2.
To what? X. What do you cube to become 1?
1.
In both of these situations, a is 2x and b is 1. You have to know your forms too. The minus 1 would be 2x minus 1. Stays the same. You had that acronym, so same. We square the 2x, 4x squared. Opposite, so it's plus now. We multiply 2x and 1. We square the 1. And you'd have to finish that one off. It would be completely backwards. You guys have your homework. That's the end of unit 5. When you come in Monday, it'll be a twin.
Okay.
This time for test. You got that to look forward to. I got a grade on it. I mean, I know y'all are grading. I got a grade on it. That is like, I ain't making suicide jokes, but that is like, makes me want to slit my wrist. It really puts me in a dark place. I don't like it.
Yeah, we work on that. You don't give us the paper, you got a grade.
You guys can work on it. You can learn how to do it, and then I won't feel that way. Apparently, I'm emotionally invested this year. I didn't want to be.